What is going on, everybody? Welcome to twitch.tv/TSSZ News, and the first of two streams we're having tonight, our Sonic 4 Postmortem stream with some supersonic gameplay mixed in for good measure. I'm Lou. Thank you very much for joining us tonight. We're going to get right to the polls so we can blow through this and get right back to Sonic Heroes, because I know you're all super eager to get back to that game. So, 3 polls up last week. Had a lot to talk about poll-wise in Sonic 4. So the first one asked, which episode of Sonic 4 had better music? And we were split exactly down the middle, 50-50 on this one. 2 votes for episode 1 and 2 votes for episode 2. We're going to be talking about that a little bit throughout the post-mortem recap after some supersonic stuff. It's going to be a lot of fun. Second, do you like the tag mechanics in Sonic 4 Episode 2? A very kind of simple yes or no there. Everyone votes yes. You had yes, no, or indifferent, 100% on yes. Everyone agrees that was a good addition to the game. And an interesting one, a very subjective one. Do the physics in Sonic 4 Episode 1 bother you? It is kind of known amongst the fans for its kind of shaky physics. Most votes were for yes, but there was one valiant soul out there who said no. Maybe I should have given an indifferent option on that one. Regardless, we are pressing ahead, and as promised, we're going to have a little bit of fun playing Supersonic in Sonic 4 Episode 2 as sort of a reward for myself for getting all 7 Chaos Emeralds straight through in our run last week. So we're going to go ahead and have a little fun with that, do a brief post-mortem on both episodes of Sonic 4 in general, and then the stream will cut out for a few minutes, we'll take a quick break, and then we'll come back with Team Dark in Sonic Heroes. So, let's get it all out of the way now. The last little bit of Sonic 4 out of our system with a little bit of supersonic fun. So as I kind of alluded to, or may have distinctly shown in the last stream, I guess we gotta go through all this again. As I kind of alluded to, we noticed that Sonic 4 Episode 2, when you play as Supersonic, it retains the physics of Sonic 4 Episode 1, which, from my perspective, is a totally baffling choice. I have no clue why they didn't just, put the new physics engine on the guy, which means that they kept all that old code in there anyway. Never gonna understand, but so be it. So we're gonna see how quickly we can get ourselves up to 50 rings here, because, as we all know, that's how it works. As you should know, if you don't know that you activate Supersonic after getting 50 rings, you're probably at the wrong stream. Just a fair warning for you. So once we hit the 50, we're going to get up above this tag action because, as you may recall, you cannot stay as Supersonic. When you cue a tag action, you have to break out of Supersonic, which is not so fun. So now we're just going to decimate this level, bit by bit here. Just like that. Oh, it's almost unfair how brutally you can smash through these levels sometimes. Except for bits like that. And we just cruise right on through. No questions asked. Right up like this. The jump height, of course, very much increased relative to normal Sonic, so you can blast through a lot of those stage hazards. Of course, I hit the log. And we're out in just over a minute. Quick and easy. Rare Foil had forgotten if they had voted in the poll. They had, in fact, voted. Straw poll will remind you, you can't vote more than once. I thought that through, you dirty cheaters! For myriad reasons, it makes sense to only vote once. So I'll also apologize in advance if you hear some gale force winds outside near, my mic is near a window in my apartment, and it is blowing outside like you wouldn't believe. The weather's been getting pretty dreary the past few days. Comes with the territory. Almost in December, after all. Can you believe it? It's already December. Where did 2016 go? I feel like it just started. Anyway. I'm not sure how much we're gonna get through here in terms of Supersonic. I don't want to belabor it too much because I do want to get to the post-mortem and then get back onto the good stuff. Well, good stuff's a relative term, I guess. Oh. I didn't hit that button, but that's totally fine. Game's controller's got a mind of its own. very confused by that, as a matter of fact. Ooh. So, how's everybody doing tonight? We got a lot of stream content coming up for you in the next couple of hours. Hope you're in this for the long haul. Grab a beer, grab a non-alcoholic beverage of your choice. If you're not 21, have a time for yourself. You know, we're gonna have to break out of Supersonic here because I goofed. See that? But we're right back in it. There we go. And quick and easy. Just like that. Now, I'm gonna not do Act 3 because I know Act 3 has a lot of pitfalls and it's easy to kind of need the tag action, so I'm just gonna be breaking out of Supersonic a lot. So we're gonna go straight to White Park. I'd like to mix up which worlds I play in a little bit as well. Rare Foil, you're not 21 yet, you're close. It's super overrated and super underrated all at the same time. I'm sure you'll understand. Now, the challenge in these later zones isn't so much maintaining the Supersonic as it is getting the 50 rings in the first place. Sometimes you can get hit if you're careless. It can take a while to build those rings back up. Then you just feel a little silly. Like right there, I'm not sure what I did. But I missed a lot of rings. Jumping around. And there we go, folks. It's time to go fast in White Park this time. And that is the fastest avalanche I've ever seen in my life. Can you imagine? Skiing down a mountain or something and then... Oh, but I need the tag action anyway! It's lame. But we're gonna get so many rings in here, we're not gonna have to worry about Supersonic for the rest of this. I wonder if you break out a Supersonic on these scripted segments. Sorry, pal. Take that. Hopefully there aren't too many more of those. Just as I say, I hope there aren't too many more. And we hit another one. I'm not sure why you don't just stay as Supersonic throughout these segments. It's a little silly that you have to break out of the super form explicitly to do stuff that the levels are designed around in the first place. So I can't really say I'm on board with that one, necessarily. Now, I have heard the argument made, and I'm sure there's countless people that will disagree. Okay, so you don't break out of Supersonic in that segment. But I have heard the argument made, and you're free to disagree, that leaving the physics in the original Episode 1 physics in for Supersonic in Episode 2 makes him easier to control. I'm not sure that I agree with that necessarily, because you have to almost basically relearn how to play in that instance, because you're suddenly switching between two different sets of physics. So, some thoughts on that. Although I'm pretty sure I know what you guys are going to say. At any rate, I don't know, we'll give it a couple more zones and then we'll get onto the Postmortem here. It's just, it makes it really easy to just plow through, and for a roller coaster level like this one, you can imagine that Supersonic's going to be a lot of fun. No tag actions required here, I don't think, so it's just going to be smooth sailing for us as soon as I can get those 50. I'm going to go a little slower and get those rings, because I want to naturally do this as quickly as possible. Where possible, of course. Of course. So close. Are we there yet? We got it! Here we go, folks! Oh! Alright. Don't normally go down this path, so I'm not sure what to expect here. Use that jump height, baby. Use that jump height. You want to talk about unnecessary springs and things in this episode, you kind of had it right there. Get back to the coastery part, people. Oh, it does make me want to do a tag action, and I'm down under 50 rings. That is the lamest. There we go. There we go. Look at it go. It even chugs a little bit on calculating his trajectory on the curves. That's how fast this goes. The physics engine is not prepared for that. And this is one bit where the boosters really kind of take the fun out of it a little bit, because you don't actually get to totally tear through at Supersonic's maximum speed, because as it turns out, his top speed is actually faster than the boosters will let you go. So that's mildly upsetting. So a little bit of a letdown there, I won't lie to you. But such is life sometimes. What are y'all talking about down here? Shadowbane only ages every 10,000 days? Jeez. Give me some of whatever you're drinking to make that happen. That would be nice. I won't lie to you. Alright, let's get some Oil Desert in here. A lot of Sky Fortress I feel like is going to be a little too pitfally to really have fun as Supersonic, so I think we're going to try to maybe just run through a couple of Oil Deserts acts and call it here. Now the real challenge here is going to be holding on to 50 rings to get that initial Supersonic. Because God knows I get hit here often enough to make that a problem. Especially these little beetle guys. Haha! Oh, wow. Pro maneuvers here, people. I wish you could transform into Supersonic in the air. I'm not sure why you have to just be on the ground to do it. It's a lot of just me inquisitively asking, why do you have to do this? Why is it this way? Ha. As I've kind of alluded to before... Oh, with Power Sneakers? Are you kidding? Are you kidding me? Oh, you want to talk fast. There's so much ground you can cover in Sonic 4 just by doing something like that. Just jumping and, you know, tearing through the level as is. So much ground. Like, I probably got farther there than the spring would normally carry me. Just for existing as Supersonic. It's kind of madness. Oh, yep. There are some frustrating bits for you, so I guess we're done with Supersonic for this act. Could I have queued that up any later? Safe anyway. I keep hitting Y to do the tag action. Oh, God. Alright. Well, you've seen enough of that, I think. We're not going to bother with that, I don't think. Oh, what do you got for me, chat, here? Rare foil. You know, if this was an actual roller coaster, it would be really lame and you'd probably ask for your money back. I mean, if I was allowed to go through it, like, on my feet and just somehow blast through that fast, I don't know. That'd be pretty interesting. It's only appropriate that we end on the ducks, right? Everyone loves the ducks. Get that shield. It's going to be important. Like that. I may have made that same mistake last time, also. Oh, wow. This is great, guys. Really did a good job on that one. Alright, here we go! Let's tear it apart! Will it let me tear it apart is the question. Oh, yeah. Here we go. Ha! It's so great to just tear through enemies you're not supposed to tear through like that. It's very cathartic in its own crazy way. Don't care about you guys. Wow. Oh, spikes? Yeah, whatever, dude. Sure. go. Thank you for that. I'm sure I've drawn attention to that before. Physics. Oh man, just moving. Who needs to fly? I'm totally breaking this part of the game. Down we go. Whoosh. That's amazing. So there you have a little taste of how Supersonic works in Sonic 4 Episode 2. It's quite interesting. I think I'm just going to pause it here on the next screen so we can kind of go over into Postmortem mode here. Just give it a sec to kind of quiet the music down. And there we are. So, what I think we're going to do for this next part is just kind of sit down a little bit and have a talk about what works and what doesn't in Sonic 4. So feel free to chime in at any point in the comment section. The chat down below there. What do we got here? Rare foil. I think Supersonic should just remix the stage theme a la Yoshi rather than replace it. That's absolutely right. The Supersonic loop is pretty short. So, let's talk a little bit about Sonic 4. Start with Episode 1. It's a flawed experience, there's no doubt about that. And I think you can kind of draw maybe as many negatives as you can for positives. In terms of positive, let me go to bat for the game first, because, again, as I've kind of reiterated throughout, I feel like sometimes I'm one of the few that will actively go to bat for it. Now, to kind of preface, immediately, it is not a great game, okay? I might, sing its praises a little bit, but ultimately, there are better, more complete, more fluid, more fun games in the franchise. Now, again, that doesn't inherently make Sonic 4 bad, but as I've kind of said before, so we're going to be reiterating a few points here. One of Sonic 4's biggest failings, if it has any, is the name Sonic 4. Because it's so content with kind of rehashing zones and level themes from past games, it really fails to get its own identity in terms of being a standalone experience. Sure, you can kind of take it for what it's worth, and by itself, it's not a bad game, as I kind of said before. But it's clear that it's just kind of meant to dig through the nostalgia well a little bit without adding too much to the series itself. Now, as I will stress repeatedly, that doesn't make it necessarily a bad game or a bad experience. In fact, the core mechanics of the game, though the physics, can irk a lot of people, the core mechanics, I think, work really well. The level design, while not maybe the most creative in the series, does at least afford you the ability to blast through the stages relatively easily, even if you're not great at the game. From my own perspective, the physics don't bother me. Yes, they're different. Yes, they take some getting used to, but it's important to note that other games in the series, other 2D side-scrolling platformers, have different physics from the original games. The Rush games have completely different physics, and they're still both great games in their own right. The Advanced series, while close, they're not a one-to-one match in terms of physics. They're still great games. Now, when you name your game Sonic 4, admittedly, you are sort of expecting a more classic experience, and to have that kind of jarring shift in physics would be sort of frustrating, and I can't understand that. But from my perspective, the physics are not a deal breaker in Episode 1, because although they are quirky and maybe not necessarily what you expected, there's still a lot of fun to be had in the game. You can, of course, criticize its length, which is the same, point of criticism for both episodes. At only 4 zones, there's really not a whole lot of content there. I believe they only launched at maybe $15 or $20, which I think is a reasonable price point for that content, but they're really, relative, especially to other games in the series, it is lacking content, especially as you take each episode by itself. The visual design of Sonic 1, I don't hate. Episode 2 obviously looks better, I think, but zones like Lost Labyrinth, sections of Mad Gear, they look good. Not all of the game looks great. I think Splash Hill, for as nice as it is, looks a little plasticky. You can say that about a lot of the game, I suppose. And aside from the sort of refresh or rehash of the past zone themes and kind of refreshing them a little bit, it's fine. I guess you can kind of sum up the whole game that way. It's fine. The music is not bad, but it's definitely not a soundtrack I'd go back to very often, aside from, a song or two, like Lost Labyrinth Act 1 I like a lot, for example, or Mad Gear Act 1. Some of it's a little short, especially with, Egg Station, for example. That loop is really obnoxious for how long you're in that zone. And the instrumentation, I thought, kind of lands in this weird middle ground between using samples from the classic games and modernizing it a little bit. And it just doesn't sound ideal. So a lot of times when people complain about Sonic 4 soundtrack, sometimes I feel like they're maybe complaining more about the instrumentation, because it really doesn't sound as good as maybe it should. So that's most of my points. Let me get to some of the comments here. Rarefoil, not sure this will work as well without someone to bounce off of, but let's try. I really don't have a choice. No one's on the stream. Shadowbane, I looked at Sonic 4 kind of like one of those series TV shows where it was mediocre, but as you were saying, flawed. I agree. Okay. Rarefoil, back in the day, having the nostalgic levels was perfectly fine, but looking back, it really hurts the game. I don't know. I don't mind that it reuses those old tropes. I would have loved to see more original stuff come out of Sonic 4, if only to give it its own identity a little bit. But it really doesn't do that, and that's one of its biggest hang-ups, I think. And, we can talk about it relative to Sonic Mania as well, because as I've been saying, Sonic Mania is going to come in and wipe the floor with Sonic 4, and it's going to, probably set the standard for 2D Sonics going forward, and it's tough to kind of make that comparison, because yes, Sonic 4, I'm imagining, if Sonic Mania is anything like what we imagine it to be, it will be inferior to that game, but then you can say the same thing about something like the advanced games or Rush, so I'm not sure. Sonic 4 just kind of exists in this weird, almost limbo state where, it's just so bland and so meh, like I think someone was hinting at when we were playing Episode 1 or Episode 2. It's not a bad game, especially Episode 1. It's just, there's just not a lot to it. I understand that. Rarefoil. It lacks identity and feels lazy, and after Lost World, it now feels like an aping of the new Super Mario Bros. Series, which is the last thing I want from Sonic. I'm not sure I agree with the New Super Mario Bros. Comparison, because in those games, it really just kind of rips the same tropes over and over again. Like, especially from New Super Mario Bros. 1 to 2 on the DS, it reused basically like the same level themes, graphics, music. It's not that lazy, but it is obviously less than ideal when you compare it to having new zones to play through and having new level themes to explore. Just like, that's one of the great things that I'm excited about with Sonic Mania. You're going to have levels like Mirage Saloon, like Studiopolis, all these brand new crazy things to explore, and they look like a ton of fun. Now, yes, there will be blatantly remixed zones in that as well. We saw Green Hill, for example. But those bring enough that are new to the table, similar to Generations, where I don't think it's going to be that big of a deal, especially with all the new content mixed in as well. You can see how that might be a little hypocritical, kind of berating Sonic 4 for reusing old content when Mania is using a lot of that same stuff in dissimilar ways. The graphics might be the same, up-resed a little bit, much cleaner and nicer, but it's adding a lot more on its own. What else? So that's Episode 1. If I had to give it a score, I went back and forth on this quite a bit, and I ultimately decided to give Sonic 4 Episode 1 3 stars out of 5 in retrospect, just because, again, as I said, it's a fun game, and taken on its own merits, it can be a really good time if you give it a chance, but it's obvious that, it's kind of lacking content, it doesn't do enough to stand out on its own, the physics will annoy a lot of people. So, especially for classic fans, like hardcore fans, they're just going to demolish Sonic 4 anytime they see it, and they're not going to have a good time with it. But for the casual player, and as I try to approach looking at these games and like objectively scoring them as though someone who's not very familiar with the franchise was playing it. So can they come in? Can they enjoy it? And I would say yes, there is a lot for even casual fans to enjoy in Sonic 4 if they try, and if they give it a chance and dig in. Classic, hardcore fans, though, not so much. It's really not the game for you, although maybe that's ironic considering that's what it was kind of meant to be in the first place. So, Episode 2. Episode 2 does a lot to improve on the failings of Episode 1, and it's clear, from the word go how that works. You have the new physics engine, which feels a lot better, a little less quirky. You have the new graphics engine, which just makes it appear visually leagues ahead of Episode 1. And from my point of view, Episode 2 is a gorgeous-looking game. In fact, in a lot of ways, it's what I would kind of want a 3D a 2D side-scrolling Sonic game to look like if it were based on 3D graphics and utilizing 3D graphics. So, that much I can't complain about, because I think it looks stellar. You hear Death Egg Mark II in the background. The level design, which is kind of tough to criticize, is a little bit more improved, I think, as well, though there's obvious spots like in Oil Desert where it just kind of gives up a little bit and falls victim to what Dimps tends to do with level design, I suppose. A lot of boost pads, a lot of springs out of nowhere. It makes it a little more cinematic and fun to watch, but, you know, it's not hard to argue that it kind of takes you out of the experience a little bit and removes you from actively playing the game, which sort of defeats the purpose of playing a game, I suppose. Now, other than that, I mean, the tag actions with Tails, I think, do a ton to give the game a little extra life and uniqueness to it. The yin-yang ball is a lot of fun to kind of abuse to get through a stage quickly. You can swim underwater, which kind of picks up the pace a little bit. You can obviously fly, but that's nothing new. And it does a good enough job of adding something additional to Episode 2 to make you kind of want to get into it. I think Episode Metal is a reasonable enough olive branch to fans who bought both episodes. Do I think it's a stunning amount of content or, anything that'll leave you with your jaw on the floor? No, but, it is ultimately better than nothing, I suppose. And, possibly be grateful it's there at all. It depends on how you really want to look at it. You can see it as, lazy and insufficient, or you can see it as, hey, it's nice to have, it's better than nothing. So that'll ultimately leave up to you. In terms of the actual levels themselves, like I've been saying, I love White Park. In retrospect, I think I had hyped up Death Egg Mark II, the actual stage itself, a little more than maybe I should have. I remember that stage being a little more meaty and full of content when I had played it a few years ago. That said, I will absolutely stand by the final boss of Sonic 4 Episode 2 as the most original thing probably in the game. And I still believe it is the height of that Sonic 4 series as far as I'm concerned. It is a lot of fun, it's intense, it's not overly difficult once you kind of get a feel for it, but it's challenging enough on your first run through where you may have some difficulty with it. So overall, Sonic 4 Episode 2 does enough to sort of improve the Sonic 4 experience in some meaningful ways, but again, for some fans, it's just not going to be enough, and for those who kind of went in on the outset not wanting to embrace Sonic 4, it's not going to do a lot to change your mind. It may be even a better jumping in point for, the casual fan, just because, it looks nicer, it plays a little better, it's a little more complex and in-depth, but other than that, it's a marginal improvement over the first one, and that's really the best thing you can say about it. Or maybe the most accurate thing you can say about it. Shadowbane. I will agree Episode 2 was what Episode 1 should have had in the first place. Yes and no. I see how they kind of wanted to incrementally reintroduce elements from the classic games, but again, as a supposed sequel to Sonic 3 and Sonic & Knuckles, you would want to use those games as the jumping off point and the basic foundation for, adding in new elements and improving the experience, much like Mania is doing. Again, if Sonic 4 hadn't used the Sonic 4 name already, you could totally have slapped it onto Sonic Mania and called it a day, even with the recycled stage themes. You really could have. Rare Foil. I remember X and Shadow's one sentence ran where he listed off all the problems Episode 1 had, but concluded with that the game was still fun, and that's more or less what I'm taking, 10 minutes to talk about now. And he points us to Some Call Me Johnny's review of Episode 2. Shadowbane. Episode Metal was okay, kinda wish they would have made more stages for it, but it was cool enough. That's fair. And Rare Foil. Episode 2 was nice and definitely an improvement, but after I finished it, all I could think was, that's it. I remember you saying that before. It does end... I'm not going to say it ends abruptly, because it very clearly builds to that point and then, ejects you out into space, and that's it. It's really obvious going in that that's the final zone, the final boss. Again, maybe those looking for more content or more, story, lore, explanation, whatever, they don't get it, and that might be aggravating to some, but it's good. It's good enough. I'm not displeased with it. So, as I said before, we gave Sonic 4 Episode 1 3 stars out of 5. Episode 2 gets 3.5 stars out of 5 because, as I said, it does marginally improve the Sonic experience, the Sonic 4 experience, without, going crazy, adding innovations of its own. I didn't touch on the music. I think the music is better, at least instrumentally, in Sonic 4 Episode 2. It loops too quickly, I think, especially in the boss fights, and that does hold it back a little bit. But on the whole, it is better, I think. I think Episode 2 is the better game of the two. Critics disagree on that. You might disagree on that. But that's how it goes, I suppose. So, we're going to wrap on that, I think. This has been the Sonic the Hedgehog 4 Postmortem. Thank you very much for watching our whole playthrough of it, really. Episode 1, Episode 2, and now only 3 episodes, and we're all tucked out and done with it. So, stay tuned. We're going to get right back into Sonic Heroes here in a couple of minutes. The stream will go offline as I prep everything, but don't go anywhere. We'll be right back in a couple of minutes. Sonic Heroes returns. Get pumped, everybody.